Can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, cool beans. That's awesome. All right, so the camera on this computer is like down here. It's super awkward because it's like the worst angle possible. But we're gonna go with it. I'm gonna continuously like look up and over because I'm expecting the camera to be right here and it's not.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm also deaf. Hang on. Hang on. We're gonna have to try this one more time. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Why can I not hear you in my headphones? Talk again.
Hello?
Still not working. Why? Oh, cool. You can record. Okay, cool. Awesome. Speakers, headphones. Okay, talk again.
Hello?
One more time.
Hello?
Okay, I got it. Working. We're good. I am terrible with technology in general. I apologize. Everything is fine. Okay. Life is good. I have my life together, sort of. We can call it that. So now I know how to, I also figured out how to record, which is super cool. So we're good. So I think maybe we can have, like, you could record the first part and do your interview with me, and then I can record the second part and do my interview with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, cool. And what do they have to be? Between 15 and 20 minutes, right?
I think so.
Okay, so I figure maybe we can like do a little timer on our phones or something just to kind of try to keep, I mean, I'm going to try to keep mine around 15 minutes. That's a lot of transcribing to do. It's a lot of talking.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna. So you want me to ask you your questions first? I can do that.
If you're already recording, I would say go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. All right. It's a little muffled the quieter you talk, but then like the louder you talk, it's pretty clear. So just to keep in mind.
To shout at you. I can do that.
Sure. Okay. I am starting. So, the purpose of this interview is to understand overseas living and what a third culture kid is. So first, can you tell me why you've lived in so many different places?
Yeah. So I have lived in so many different places because my father works for the Department of State. And so my family has moved around every 2 or 3 years since I was 12. And we're currently on our fourth coast.
Awesome. Okay. What is a third culture kid?
Okay, so third culture kid is actually kind of a funny concept because a lot of times you hear third culture and you think, or third world, and you think not civilized by Western standards, or not overly industrialized, so on and so forth. But the actual definition of a third culture kid is somebody who has either grown up with parents from two different countries, and a lot of time with both cultures, or someone similar to me who has moved around a lot and lived in a lot of different cultures, and then those things kind of come into a melting pot together in that person. And so they have all of these different cultures that kind of come together and develop their personality and develop their beliefs and their ideals and all the things like that. And a lot of overseas schools actually learn about third culture kids and why you are a third culture kid. and how that will affect you later in life, or how it might affect you later in life, and then also how you can help other people who to a degree struggle with being a third culture kid to feel more accepted and more relaxed and more safe within the situations that we're in, because we're, you know, we don't grow up in the same place, we don't have
Right.
the same people all the time and all of the things like that.
Gotcha. So you'd say that's definitely a struggle of growing up that way, and that's just something.
Yeah,
I guess it's unique. It kind of, when you meet somebody else like that, I guess that's a really cool thing y'all can share.
yeah, for sure. I know, in an anecdotal way, coming back to Milledgeville. I mean, I grew up in Milledgeville. You know, I was in Milledgeville from the time that I was 6 months old to the time I was 12. So I had a close knit group of friends. I had a community. I had a school. I had clubs, sports, all of the things that kids do. And then while I knew it was coming, my life was still almost violently uprooted and shifted and dropped into a new place.
Right.
That I didn't know the language. I didn't know anybody. We were in temporary housing. There was, you know, everyone, all of our neighbors only spoke Polish. There was no asking a neighbor for this or that. Like that, it was very, very different. And the culture shock can hit you. And
Right.
coming back to the US, I got what we call reverse culture shock, where we've lived so away from American culture for so long that you come back to American culture and it's weird, it's foreign, it's completely different, and it's like living in a foreign country all over again. And
Right.
then 2 years into it, you know, you're still here and you're not leaving. 2 years into it, you're like, well, it's time for me to pack a suitcase. Like, why aren't we moving now? So it's been a struggle in that way to really find where you fit,
Right.
when for so long you haven't truly fit anywhere.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So just fill me in on your timeline of like your college years. Like, what has that looked like for you? Because I know right now you're in Saudi Arabia, but like in the spring you were here, right?
Yes. So my first semester of college, I had just come out of Germany. I got to the U.S. a little less than a month before classes started, maybe. I came for new student freshman orientation, because we weren't supposed to miss it, and I was so jet lagged. We got in like the day before orientation, and I got up so jet lagged. I'd been up since 4 o'clock in the morning. I was dying by the end of it. I was so tired. But it was still super exciting. You know, the only school I ever wanted to go to was Georgia College. A lot of my family went there. My grandparents and my great grandparents still live in Milledgeville. I have family who comes to the school to have lunch with me sometimes, and they're like, wow, let me tell you what this used to be and what this used to be and what this used to look like, and like all of these things. And so it was really cool to come into that situation, and that I had a strong support system and my family was back with me and all of those things. But, you know, I was lucky. I got to spend my first semester with my mother and my sister in town. And my dad came near the end of the semester from Germany. He had to stay. But then in January, right after the new semester started, my parents moved across the world. You know, we're on the other side of the world. Like you pretty much can't get any further away from American culture than this. Like there's just no getting more different. And so I remember in that time, life was very fluid. You know, I had to be in school, but I was living to get home because that's where my parents were. And we were counting down the days before they were leaving me. And I had never been alone before. You know, I'd never been without my nuclear family.
Right.
You know, we had packed up and moved across the world together 3 different times. and I had helped them pack for a fourth. I had helped them get ready for a fourth, and I wasn't going with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was weird to see all of our bags packed and mine weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was weird to see. It was weird to be on the outside of the car looking in as they drove away. You know, that was just not something we'd ever done before. And so it was, that was a new experience. And then I did my second semester at home with my grandparents. I do live with my grandparents. So I did get to stay with family, which was also a very important and instrumental part of my not having a complete breakdown.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so the first semester was, you know, was okay. And then in the summer, I came back to Saudi. I left the day that classes ended. Like I left my last final and I got on a plane. There was no, I had my bags packed for a week. I was ready to leave. I was like, I could just do my finals from there. This is fine. But I was ready to go. And so I got on a plane and I got here and, you know, I worked. I spent time with my sister. I made a few friends. It was great. And then I had to leave again. And I came back to the States, went back to school. And then I did another semester. And, you know, and then my parents were able to come home, which was awesome as well. And then I spent the spring, part of the spring. The whole spring, I'm sorry. I actually got stuck in America with COVID. I was supposed to leave for Saudi and couldn't because of COVID. The borders had, the day that I was going to be able to leave, the borders closed. And so I was not able to go. But then, you know, the borders finally opened. I was doing classes online. I came here, finished my summer courses online, fought with the school, honestly, to be allowed to take courses online for the semester, and finally got approval. And I've been here since. You know, I do school in the evenings. I do school in the middle of the night usually, because that's when people in America are up and doing things. So that's when I get responses from teachers, and that's when I can get on here and do an interview with you. It's 11 p.m. You know, this is when we can do things. So I do school in the evenings. I go to work in the morning. I work all day. I come home, I do school. I go to bed, I get up and I go to work again. I think that's pretty much my life, but I love it. I forget sometimes how close knit me and my sister are when we're so far apart.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sorry, that was a really long answer.
No, that's fine. Okay, so let's see. How many countries have you lived in total?
I have lived in 4 different countries: America, Poland, Germany, and Saudi Arabia. But I have visited, I think, some 20 odd countries and spent time there learning culture and getting to know people and sightseeing and being a tourist. It was actually really fun to be a tourist. Right. After you're not allowed to be a tourist in the country that you live in. It was super fun to go somewhere else, and, you know, I could carry a camera and like snap pictures of everything and be that one really weird tourist kid who just wants to touch everything. But yeah, so 4 countries that I've lived in.
Awesome. Which was your favorite and why?
Okay, now that's a hard question. Because every country has its great things and its not so great things. And every country is so different from,
right. So they're not really
from the others. Right, there it's very almost apples and oranges trying to compare different countries, and especially considering, you know, I was 13, 14 when I lived in Poland. Right. I was 16 and 17 when I lived in Germany. I'm an adult now living in Saudi Arabia. So my life circumstance has been slightly different in all of them. So I think I would probably say that Poland was the one that had one of the biggest impacts on me, just in that it gave me my independence to be exposed to real public transport I could catch a bus, a 10-minute walk from my house any time of day. I walked or rode my bike pretty much anywhere I wanted to go. My parents kind of gave me free reign. They said, tell me where you're going, make sure you check with me that we don't have something to do, and then get out of here. Like, go and live, go do something with yourself. And, so that was not something that we had the opportunity for in America. And then in Germany, I grew up. So, I learned independence in Poland. And then in Germany, I grew up. I figured out what high school was all about, for real, what high school was all about. And I found a renewed passion for exercise and for contact sport. That's what I do now, is contact sports. And then Saudi has, I think, been the place that has deeply rooted in me a sense of how culture affects ideology so much. You don't see that in Europe, but you see that in an Islamic country where the women cover their hair always, where you see traditional dress everywhere you are, because that's how people show their devotion to the God that they worship. So a favorite, I probably can't say, but everywhere has definitely had an impact on me. And each has been a favorite in its own way.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Okay. Would you want to keep moving around like long term, or maybe like 5 more years of doing this, or how do you feel about the traveling?
So I love to travel. I am one of the very few people I know who can pass out on an airplane and stay that way. I can like pop a Dramamine and I'm gone. There's just no keeping me awake. So I love to travel, and I definitely want to keep traveling. I'm not so sure that I don't really want to settle down. I've spent half of my life picking up what life I've built and moving it somewhere else, and then building it again, and then packing it up and moving it again and again and again. And the people around me have built a life, packed it up and moved it, built a life, packed it up and moved it, built a life, packed it up and moved it. That is our life, is in transit. And I don't really want to live in transit anymore. I want a house and I don't know, like a white picket fence or something. But, I want a place that's mine, and a place to call home and home base, and to always come back to that home base. And we do have that in a family home in America. I'm not saying that we don't. But coming into adulthood, I don't want to be away from the people that I love in this way anymore, really. Like, that's really hard for me.
Right. Yeah, I bet. Let's see. So you've already said you spend around like 2 years living in another country. Typically. Awesome. Challenges of living overseas. We've already talked about how it's just difficult. You just feel like your roots never get that deep. There's only so far you can go because you're just gonna leave. Right, but what are some rewards that you would say?
Okay.
I know you've already talked about it a little bit.
Yeah. No. So, where I was saying the challenge is how it can be super hard to like pack up and move all the time. And, you don't necessarily make the closest of friends. You have certain friends that maybe hang on, but for the most part, the friends you made will not stay your friends. They'll be your acquaintances. They'll be people that you follow on Facebook, and things like that. But something that is so rewarding about moving around so much is I have met people from every corner of the world. I've met people whose parents immigrated from third world countries, who maybe were not alive, or who maybe were so young that they don't really remember living there, but their parents do, and they tell them stories. And so they come with experiences and stories that are just completely astounding to someone who's never lived that way before.
Right.
Or living in Saudi Arabia. I had this amazing opportunity last summer to sit down with my colleague. She worked in my little office space with me. We were a little cubicle of 4, but she was the one who, we had no walls between us. We sat back to back on our computers and did work all day, but she was my friend. She and I became great friends. She had 2 young children, a lovely husband. She had lived in the United States for 12 years. And so she had seen that lifestyle, and she had come back to Saudi with her family for work reasons for the most part. But, I was able to sit down with her and have a conversation about culture and about faith and about religion and about why some women in Saudi Arabia choose to cover their hair, because it's not law here to cover your hair, not if you're not Muslim. So, when I asked her, I got to ask her questions like, do you feel oppressed because you have to wear a hijab in your religion? Is that something that makes you, is that something that you don't want to do that you have to do? And I told her, like, I do want an honest answer, and know that this conversation is purely for my understanding, and I want to know. And she was like, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I wear a hijab not because I have to or because my faith demands it, but because, or not, I shouldn't say because my faith demands it, but because for her, in her life, for her to show that she is respecting her husband, that she loves her husband and her husband only, and that she loves her God, covering her hair was a sign of respect, of piety, of love, and of being an upright woman of her faith, And so she was like, so I have gone without wearing a hijab. I don't like it. I feel naked. I hate it. She'd done it. She'd worn pants. She did not like it. She would wear pants as long as she had a tunic or a dress that went to her knees.
Right.
But she was like, if I wear pants by themselves, I feel like I'm showing off more of me than I want to give to anybody but my husband, And so it's very different from what we believe. Many of us believe in, in the West and everything. So I think the major reward that I have gotten out of moving around so much, beyond having the opportunity to travel the world, I mean, that's amazing, but is learning culture and truly understanding other people's cultures and what they mean to them and why they believe what they believe and why they do what they do. And I think that it's made me a more well-rounded person, a stronger person, a better person. I hope it's made me a better person. I think that it's made me more understanding person.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it changed my ideologies. There are a lot of things that are very, very American about me. Very, very, almost annoyingly American about me. But there are things that are very European about me. And honestly, there are some things that are very Arab about me, that have kind of become very ingrained parts of who I am, that I carry those things with me, across life, across all of my interactions, having conversations about culture and being diplomatic in that way, in a way that lets people open up and talk to you. I've carried that into college, and now I can talk to people. Right. Living all over has given me the ability to make anybody be my friend in like the drop of a pin, just about, because you have to be able to do that. Whenever you are not going to have friends unless you figure out how to make them, you can kind of go into any situation and find a friend. Right. And I think it served me well coming back into a place that I barely remembered from childhood.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would probably be the biggest reward, is
awesome.
The experience like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So, like, if I were to move to a new country tomorrow, what would be the most important thing you would say to do, like, upon arrival?
All right. Learn some of the words of the language. Learn hello, please, thank you, where is the toilet? I cannot tell you how many times I have needed to ask for a bathroom and not had the language to do it with. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And perhaps after moving to Saudi, perhaps also do a little research on what type of toilet you're going to be faced with. Because they have what we call squatty potties here, which is literally a hole in the ground. You put your feet on the sides and you squat. That's how you go to the bathroom. Thankfully, not in our own houses. I probably would die. But the first time I saw this, I was not prepared and I just about had a heart attack. So, jokingly aside, though, really learning some of the language and just like simple words, nothing complicated. You know, you don't need to be able to have a conversation before you get there, but knowing a handful of words just to be able to say, I'm trying.
Mm-hmm.
I am trying to integrate myself, but right now I still need somebody who has had more time to learn a new language than I have. So being able to ask someone if they speak English, ask for, you know, the basics, please and thank you, to be able to be polite and to be able to be courteous in a new place. You know, and also something that we found was actually saving grace that my father did was he downloaded maps of the place that we were going to live onto our GPS so that we didn't need Wi-Fi to get to them. Because when we moved to Poland, we did not have Wi-Fi for 4 or 5 days. And there's no way to contact people in the United States in another country without Wi-Fi or paying an exorbitant international call fee.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and because he had done that, we were able to find a mall and walk 2 miles to said mall and sit down in a food court, have a real meal, more or less a real meal, and call our family back home and let them know that we had arrived safely, that we were okay, that life was good, that we were going to be fine, and that we would talk to them soon. So those are, I think, probably the most important things is just take a few minutes to look at a map or download a map if you can. Maybe pick up a handful of words. Yeah, I mean, I think that would probably be the biggest things, you know, and obviously make sure looking at, you know, especially if it's a place that's not more westernized and more similar in culture to America, for example, Saudi, you know, take a look at, I mean, you can use a blog post for this, but like, you know, take a look at just some cultural differences so that you don't make a complete cultural faux pas of yourself. Right. And say something or do something that is super offensive without meaning to.
Right.
Because that's never a good first impression to make.
Awesome. And last, do you have any interesting stories from living overseas?
Where to start? A lot of interesting stories. So I'll give you a funny one first. In Germany, it is very different. The levels of what we consider modesty are very different than in America. You know, in America, being fully covered, or, you know, at least having like the important parts covered is really important. In Germany, that might not be the case. You know, there was a whole lot of places you could go completely nude. This one time, we were standing, I think we might have had all of our funny stories happening at a bus stop. We took the bus everywhere. But this one time, we were standing at a bus stop and my mother just went completely slack-jawed, like something was happening. And so then obviously I'm looking around trying to figure out what's going on. And I look down the road and there is an older woman, I mean, in her 70s, maybe 80s, riding a bicycle, completely nude. I thought this, Thankfully, she got a little bit closer. She was actually wearing like a nude colored bra and underwear set, which is fine. But from a little bit further back and moving, we were all completely certain that this 70-year-old woman was riding her bicycle in her birthday suit in the middle of the day. And oh my goodness, we just about all fell out laughing. We were struggling so much. Like we were just like, we're not laughing at her. I promise we're not laughing at her. We're laughing at a like inside joke here. This is fine. But oh my goodness, it was so funny.
Man.
Just to see the difference in like what you will not see that in Milledgeville unless someone is
Not well.
potentially not well. And it was typical to sun yourself outside of your house, outside of your property, without clothes on, or with very little clothing on. And you just see it everywhere. It was normal. So it was just culture. It was like a culture shock a little bit just in that moment. Let's see. And then something not quite so funny, if I can think of one. I feel like I should be able to just pull them right out of a hat at this point. Okay, and then this story is less, not necessarily interesting, but just a great depiction of character. So in American media and in a lot of Western media, is the Islamic culture is generally villainized in a lot of ways. You know, there's not much to be said for the good things that happen in Saudi Arabia and in other Muslim countries. But just in an everyday way, I ride my bike back and forth to work every day. It's easier. I don't have a car here. I can't drive here. Women were only just given the right to drive a year ago, maybe.
Wow.
So that's been super new and a very big step toward a different type of equality, you know, a different type of making life so much easier for females here. But I was riding my bike home from work a week ago, maybe a little more. And I had stopped at the intersection because the drivers here are a little bit crazy. There are no lines on the road. Road rules are suggestions. It's crazy. So I stop at every intersection and I make sure it's completely clear before I'll try to bike because I cannot bike as fast as a car. And I do not have the reaction time to stop an accident from happening on a bicycle. With like a collision like that, I would lose that fight every time. So I'm very careful. But I had these two Saudi men who passed me in full traditional dress. And, you know, on occasion you get men who will snub you, you know, people who think they're all high and mighty and they'll snub you. But these two guys like stopped and gave me this little bow and they said, "Good morning, friend," or "Good morning, my friend," or something like that. And then said in Arabic, "May God bless you." And then they kept walking. And I was smiling the rest of the day, you know.
Yeah,
it made my day that these guys had stopped and taken a moment to just bestow for them the highest blessing they could, you know, on another person. And I'm a believer. And so, you know, I will tell people, like, you know, I'll say, "Have a blessed day," you know, "May God bless you," things like that to some people. But here it's an honor. It's an honorary thing. Like, you know, like it's something that I was a Western woman, very obviously, by wearing leggings, a t-shirt, and my hair was uncovered. You know, I was not a Muslim woman. I was not Saudi. It was very, very obvious that I was an outsider in their land. And they stopped to take the time to offer me, like, you know, a blessing, to offer me the grace of God and the love of God. Like, and that was just a moment when I saw a very Christ-like, a very kind and courteous nation of people who are villainized in a way that they shouldn't be in
Mhm.
Western media. You know, like Saudis are some of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. Like they really are. So I think that's probably my favorite story just from living in Saudi. It might be one of my favorites from living anywhere. Just that, you know, just that they took that time, and I think that that's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's all the questions that I have for you. So thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I'll stop the recording.